All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're breaking down the fundamentals of the ISSB's SASB Activity Metrics, specifically looking at the real estate sector. If you spend any amount of time looking at ESG or sustainability reports, you already know that the sheer volume of numbers thrown at you can be completely overwhelming. And honestly, they can be kind of misleading if you don't know exactly what you're looking at. Well, that is exactly the problem activity metrics are designed to fix. They're basically the foundational tools we use to actually make sense of all those massive data points around buildings, energy, and water.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. Why activity metrics matter. 2. Metric 1. Number of assets. 3. Metric 2. Leasable floor area. 4. Metric 3. Indirect management. 5. Metric 4. Occupancy rate. And finally, 6. Putting it all together.
Section 1. Why activity metrics matter. Before we get into the technical weeds here, we really have to establish the main challenge investors and analysts face when they're reading these reports.
Imagine you've got this massive global real estate investment trust, a REIT. We're talking hundreds of sprawling skyscrapers spread across multiple continents. Right next to it, you're looking at a boutique regional developer with, say, 5 mid-sized office buildings. If both of these companies just report their raw total energy output or their total water withdrawals, trying to compare them directly is literally impossible. Obviously, the global REIT is going to use way more total energy, but does that mean they're actually less efficient? Not necessarily. If they both report using 10,000 megawatt hours in a quarter, who's actually doing a better job managing their resources? Without knowing the scale of their operations, there is no way to tell.
The underlying problem is skewed data without context. If you're only looking at the sheer volume of resources consumed, the reality of a company's efficiency is totally distorted. It's exactly like trying to compare the weekly grocery bill of a family of 5 to a single guy living alone without actually knowing the household sizes. It just doesn't work. The fix for this is an apples-to-apples comparison using what we call normalized data. We have to strip away the absolute size of the portfolio to see the true performance of the assets.
So that brings us to our core concept. As defined by the standard, activity metrics act as your magnifying glass. They're specific data points that quantify the exact scale of an entity's operations. Now, they aren't meant to be read all by themselves. They won't tell you much in isolation. Instead, you use them alongside your high-impact sustainability metrics, like total carbon emissions or water withdrawals, to normalize that data and finally get a fair, highly accurate comparison across the industry.
Section 2. Metric 1. Number of assets. Let's look at how this builds the absolute foundation of real estate disclosure. This first one is super straightforward. It's literally just a count, quantifying exactly how many physical assets are sitting in the portfolio. The unit of measure is just a number. It's the most basic measure of scale, giving analysts a true bird's-eye view of how vast the real estate footprint actually is.
But there's a little nuance here. You don't just toss out one giant number. This counts distinct properties, aligned with the 2018 GRESB reference guide, and it has to be disclosed separately for each portion of the portfolio using the FTSE REIT classification structure. Now, here is a really surprising takeaway: how mixed-use assets are handled. Because a single building might have retail space on the ground floor and corporate offices up top, it can actually be reported in multiple sectors. That means if you tally up the numbers across all sectors, your reported total might actually exceed your physical on-the-ground building count. Pretty interesting, right?
Section 3. Metric 2. Leasable floor area. Now we move from counting the buildings to measuring the actual space inside them.
Okay, so to normalize data like energy density, just knowing the number of buildings isn't quite enough. A giant skyscraper and a tiny branch bank both count as one asset, but obviously their energy needs are worlds apart. We need the precise leasable square meterage. This is the true measure of the physical space that actually demands constant heating, cooling, and lighting. Just like before, this area has to be broken down and disclosed separately by sector. The standard global unit is square meters. But check this out. The standard recognizes that in certain sectors, square meterage isn't the most relevant metric. So if floor area isn't available for apartments or for lodging and resorts, you are officially allowed to substitute it with the number of units. Why? Because a hotel operator tracks their business in available rooms or keys, not just raw square meters. It's a super practical workaround that ensures we still get reliable data without forcing unnatural reporting.
Section 4. Metric 3. Indirect management. This metric brings us directly into the often complex relationship between landlords and tenants.
This is where it gets really compelling.
This metric asks a vital question. What percentage of your total square meterage is actually out of your direct environmental control? As an investor, you absolutely want to know who is holding the steering wheel when it comes to sustainability. We measure this dynamically as a percentage by floor area. It all boils down to one simple thing: who actually has the authority to implement environmental policies? If the landlord has that power, or if they share it with the tenant, it's a managed asset. But if a single tenant has the absolute sole authority to dictate those policies, which happens all the time in commercial real estate, the tenant holds the operational control. Under the standard, that makes it an indirectly managed asset. This matters immensely. Think about it. If a REIT owns a massive industrial warehouse, but it's leased under a triple net lease to an e-commerce giant who dictates 100% of the operating policies, the REIT's actual ability to drive down carbon emissions in that building is severely limited. By requiring companies to disclose this percentage, investors get an incredibly honest picture of where a company can actually enact meaningful climate change policies and where their hands are just legally tied. Section 5. Metric 4. Occupancy rate. Our final pillar gives us context based entirely on human presence.
Buildings aren't just static objects, right? A bustling commercial tower running at full capacity is obviously going to burn through significantly more resources, more heating, more elevator trips, more water usage than a ghost building sitting half empty. So this occupancy percentage is absolutely crucial for understanding the true context behind any sudden spikes or drops in consumption.
And again, you got to break this down by specific property sector. Context is everything here. An 80% occupancy rate in residential apartments might be a massive red flag concerning tenant turnover, but an 80% occupancy rate in high turnover retail, that might be completely standard and highly profitable. Segmenting this human presence data gives analysts the exact context they need.
Finally, Section 6, putting it all together. The whole point of this explainer is to show how these 4 activity metrics synthesize with the raw sustainability data.
When you sit these structured activity metrics right next to your raw sustainability numbers, the magic happens. You transform incomparable numbers into a crystal clear story of efficiency. You take your massive total energy consumed and divide it by your leasable floor area. Suddenly, you've got your precise energy intensity per square meter. You take your total water withdrawals and view them through the lens of your occupancy rate, instantly explaining why usage jumped 20%. It wasn't leaky pipes. People just returned to the office. You look at your indirectly managed percentage to understand why tenant submetering is low. You literally don't have the legal authority to install them. This is exactly how you read the data intelligently. And you know what the absolute best part of this whole system is? It's universal. These SASB standards, now under the ISSB and the IFRS Foundation, ensure everyone plays by the exact same rules worldwide. For a global investor, this takes out so much guesswork. Whether you're looking at a property in Tokyo, London, or New York, the definitions for floor area, operational control, and sector classification remain flawlessly consistent.
So once you strip away the sheer, intimidating size of a portfolio and look strictly at your normalized efficiency, how competitive is your real estate really? Because today, investors aren't just blindly looking for the biggest portfolios, they're aggressively searching for the smartest, most efficient, and most transparently managed ones. The next time you open up a sustainability report, don't just jump to the raw carbon numbers. Look for the activity metrics, do the math, and uncover the real story. After all, when your data is finally normalized, what story will your assets actually tell?